Welcome to the NYC Godcast, where we offer wacky wisdom weekly from God's Word. On today's episode, we're aiming at the 2025 theme, Life on Target, with the Messiah who never missed, so stay tuned. Well, we are officially halfway through our preview of the NYC 2025 theme, Life on Target. So over the past couple of episodes, we've looked at the aim of allness and just exactly what the life of a Christian is meant to look like as created and designed by God. Last week, we talked about sin and sins and what a life that misses the mark might mean. And today, we're going to be talking about the grand gospel solution sent from heaven with awesome aim. In recent years, this is a little bit of my soapbox. So you may or may not know this. I'm thinking if you've ever tuned in before, you may have caught on to this. These folks, I would think, know this. But this is a little bit of my soapbox. In recent years, the Christian culture has taken a critical turn into nothing more than a motivationalism. Like, we are not Christians anymore. We're motivationalists. If you turn on any given radio station, if you open any Christian magazine, any TV program, if you pick any so-called YouTube Christian channel or a Christian book that's been printed in the last decade, you're going to find messages that say things like, you're enough, you can do it, you have what it takes, and it's all going to be under the banner of Christianity. Ironically, what so often is forgotten and overlooked is that that's actually the message of Satan in the Garden of Eden. Hello! Satan comes to Eve and tempts her by saying she could do it. She could be enough. And that was all in spite of what God had done and what God said he would do. And that's what Satan tempts Eve with. And that's what we've made the banner of Christianity today. And so Jesus comes on the scene, right? And Jesus comes out, we hear the Gospels, and Jesus says things like this. This was his message. This was his banner. Repent! Turn away from your way of living. He says things like, unless you give up your life, you're going to lose it. He says things like, deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. Maybe my personal favorite. In fact, it is literally stamped on my office wall. John 15:5, Jesus looks at the Christian crowd and says, without me, you can do nothing. That's the message Jesus gave. That was his public proclamation. I don't know what we think we're promoting around here in modern day Christianity, but it's not the message of Jesus. So what we've seemingly forgotten in Christian culture today is that you cannot understand your need for the good news without first understanding the bad news. Good news without first understanding the bad news is never going to work. You're never going to understand your need or the solution until you understand your problem. And so you have no need for a gospel until you come to grips with your own failures, your own sin. So the Bible practically screams at each of us how unable, how incapable, and how powerless we are to do the very thing that God created us to do. We cannot hit the mark. We can't land the target. We can't bank the bullseye that God created us for. We're not able. Which is why, from the very beginning, literally starting in Genesis chapter 3, the Bible begins to foretell of the coming Christ. The Bible tells us that a solution is coming to mankind's problem. And so the story of Jesus, and what we're going to talk about at camp, the story of Jesus does not start in a little town of Bethlehem in Matthew 1 or Luke 2. The story of Jesus begins in Genesis 3. Actually, Colossians tells us it starts before Genesis 1, but we find the first foreshadow of Jesus in Genesis chapter 3. And it flows from that point all the way through the Old Testament into the New Testament as God continues to tell all of us the solution is coming. You have a big problem. You are not enough. You don't have what it takes, but I'm going to do something about it. The solution is coming. And so as we turn to the Gospels in the New Testament, we find the grand arrival, the mighty climactic event as Jesus, the sent solution from heaven, the coming Christ, finally arrives. Do, 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 do. No one's going to participate today. Going to make me fanfare by myself.
You were doing such a good job.
I thought you said, who's grandma? I was like, who's grandma? Who's grandma? It's like the Aldi's version of Palm Sunday. Okay, so Jesus steps onto the scene, and Jesus lives this perfect and pristine life that never once, ever sinned. He lived perfectly submitted to God's will at all times and in all ways. Jesus only did what God said to do. He only went where God said to go, and he only said what God said to say. Jesus perfectly lived in the center of God's will his entire life, making Jesus the bullseye of our belief. Jesus lived the very life on target that God created all of us to live, but we were incapable of living. And yet, as amazing as that is, the story of Jesus would be a very cruel and unfair joke if it ended at Calvary. If Jesus, as God, lived a perfect life and then showed us what it took to live a life on target and then went back to heaven and said, now you try, the gospel would actually be the worst news ever, not the good news at all. Which is why the Bible teaches that Jesus, upon personifying perfection, he actually rewards us with his righteousness. He gives us who missed the mark his very rightness before God, and then he ascended to heaven to help enable us to continue living in the same rightness he came in. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
So we now stand before God with the very perfect life of Jesus as our own. His bullseye is now our belief. That is what our faith is resting in, is in his perfection. And so during one of our prayer stations, someone wonderfully titled, the title of this prayer station is Just As If I Never, no, that's not it. I messed that totally up. CJ erased that. I stole my own thunder. It's just as if I hit the bullseye. And it's not cool just because it rhymes. Justification is a very real doctrine in the New Testament. Justification means just as if I never sinned. I'm justified. It's just as if I had never sinned. So looking at a life on target, we now have the righteousness of Jesus. We now have his perfection, just as if we were the ones who made that perfect life and hit that bullseye perfectly. And so the gospel is the good news because it's offered as a grand solution to our grand problem. And so Jesus made a way that when there was no way, he saved us from our sin. He lived a life on target, and then he gave us the credit. That's the gospel. That's what our faith lies in. And that is amazing and remarkable.
Well, and I think that's what's amazing. Like, he puts that on us. Like, we are the example. We're the light of the world. And like you said at the beginning, it takes us realizing our sin and who we are and what we are, what we're doing for us to even come close to that mark or even just truthfully surrender our life to Christ. Because if we're all thinking about ourselves, and even it can even be as simple as thinking about yourself, not intentionally, but even like, I am a worrier and think so lowly of myself so many times. And sometimes I don't even realize those things, and those things can keep us and direct us away from that mark.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Christ came as an example to show us how to live, to show us what he could do and can do and will continue to do. But then we lose sight of that, and that's what pushes us. Like, we might be going straight, like the target might be going straight, but then, or the target, the target, the target, the
Aldi's version. I get a quarter every time I say Aldi's. It's for the carts. Sorry.
I got a target set.
The dart might be going straight, but then we start thinking of ourselves, or we start looking at something a little bit that isn't exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and that's what pulls us away from Christ, when he is literally the example. Like, he's the one standing right there, like, he's right behind the dartboard, like, just come on, you can do it. Not the world saying you can do it, but Christ is saying you can do it through me.
Yeah.
And that's what we lose sight of. Like, we can do nothing, absolutely nothing.
And that's actually the message that Paul writes to the church of Galatia. He says, "Oh, foolish Galatians." That's a quote. And the reason is they believed that Jesus was enough, like, he died for their sins, but it was up to them, it was up to the Galatians, the Christians, to live the life after salvation. And I think that, just like to Emma's point, like, that's how most of us live our lives. We know Jesus died for our sins, and that's why we're saved. But now it's up to us to please God after that. Foolish Christians, like, that is not the gospel. It's exactly what Emma said. The gospel is that Jesus lived the perfect life, and now through you, he wants to continue living his perfect life. He hit the bullseye the first time, and he's going to enable us to continue hitting the bullseye and living in the center of God's will. That's the gospel. And so anytime, like Emma said, anytime we start looking at ourselves, whether poorly or pridely, we are taking the we're taking the focus off of him who deserves it, him who made this life possible, and placing it on us who did nothing but ruin this life. And so oh, foolish Christians.
So, like it's amazing how, like you said earlier, how the message has changed in Christianity, and it's not like it's amazing to me how many Christians are like surprised by this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what happened.
Yep.
Who's responsible for this? I'm like, Satan is, and the Bible said it was going to happen.
But just like with Eve, like who doesn't want to hear those things?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want those opportunities? And so, yes, Satan's the one who baited the hook, but we all took the bait. Like we wanted that. We wanted the motivationalism and the self, preservation, and it's our fault.
Yeah. And I think that's what is like crazy too, because yes, some of them might see it and be like, how did this happen? But there's also the people that are actively listening to those things and don't even realize they're getting absolutely nothing. They're just being told that they're a great person because they're going to church and they're living this life for Christ, but not always really living for Christ.
I have a friend who here locally who goes to another church, and we work together. So I know his church, and we'll just say they're of that flavor. We'll just leave it at that. And he is always so amazed and blown away at how our folks just show up and serve. Long hours, intense work, and so many of us, like every time I see him, and actually several people with him, they're always like, where do you find these people? And like, what I want to tell them is like, this is true Christianity. Like, we live a sacrificial life who desires to give. But when the message you hear constantly is it's all about you, you're the star of the show, you're enough, you can do it. The result of that is, I don't want to serve. I don't want to sacrifice. I don't want to work. Yeah. And so, he's surrounded by no one, he can't get anyone to help him. And the reason is the brand of, I say brand very loosely, the brand of, there's only one Christianity. Like there is no brands. There are no brands. Sorry, Paul Moore. That's bad English. But there are no type. Like there is Christianity and then there's not. And that I guess is what terrifies me. Yeah. I don't think any of us are willing to pass judgment on the Corinthians Christians because the Bible does say they were saved. But they're definitely not living to the fullest extent of the victorious Christian life that we were called to live.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it should really terrify us. Like if you can't, we talked about this last week, I think, but if you can't tell the difference between a Christian and a lost person because their lives are so similar, something's gone amok. Like something's not right, not what God intended.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I'm so, I don't know how to phrase it. I don't want to say in love with, like that's awkward. I'm so in favor of, like I so promote, we'll go with that. That sounds a little better. I so promote old dead guys is because they preceded this message that we see around us today. Like they got it. They lived the victorious Christian life and their message was you're not enough, but God is. You are the problem, but God's sending you a solution. Like Jesus is everything you need for life and godliness. That was the old dead guy's message. We've lost that today. And like, to be completely honest, I have great trust issues with any modern day author, any modern day podcaster, YouTuber, author, singer. Like I have great trust issues. If you hand it to me, I'm probably going to scoff at you. I may try it, but I'll probably scoff at you because I have trust issues. We have the wrong message today.
So like last year at camp, I don't know if you remember this or not, but one of the prayer stations was the platypus.
Oh yes, I remember. I still have that platypus.
Do you?
Okay. A whole box of platypus. Platyply?
Yeah. So like that's been like my motto.
Platypus.
Camp. Yeah. Because like what we have are like instead of platypus, okay, we like for example, like a tiger, and then we're looking over the lion and we're like, oh, that's a sinner. You know what I mean? But that's a lion and I'm a tiger. Not realizing you're both feline and like from a distance, I don't think anyone can recognize like a jaguar from like a cheetah. I think I got it right that time.
Is it one black and one's
spotted? But it's not a jaguar. A leopard and a cheetah.
Leopard.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like even from like across the street
Yeah.
until they raced, you wouldn't know which one was which.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like, Saint Bernard or some species of wolf, you might be confused as to what is what. But a platypus clearly is a platypus. You know what I mean? He doesn't look like anything else, but the world wants to look like these other animals without being those animals.
Which is exactly the problem Jesus had with the Pharisees. The one scene, I don't remember what chapter it's in, but you have the Pharisee and the publican praying side by side. And like that's Jesus' whole point is you're the same. You're both felines, like to use your analogy.
Right.
They weren't cats.
Right.
But they were both sinners. They were both sinners, but one was relying on himself and the other beat his chest, said, woe is me, have mercy. And that's what we see that in church today. Like even with the motivational stuff, like they're not Pharisees in the sense of they're rule keepers. They very much aren't, but they are in the sense of they're relying on self when self is the problem. God sent a solution in Jesus.
Well, and I think that's what's scary too, because they are so, you can do this. Like it's so great that they have to rely on more than just themselves. Like they can't just say, okay, God, you've got this, because how in the world, like you ain't got it. So what else are you going to put your focus in? Like we were talking about trying to not giving God our all the first week of this, I think. Not giving God our all. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're not giving Christ their all, because if you're thinking about yourself, there's no way that you are truthfully giving him your all.
But that's so difficult because not only just through the modern motivational everything, like the world that we live in focuses so much on self that like when Jesus said count the cost, like we look at it as, ooh, like the disciples, they died some pretty horrible deaths, okay? But when we look at today, count the cost, which means you're walking opposite of the world. And while they may not lead you to being crucified, okay, it's going to cost you a lot to follow Christ.
Well, even if it never cost you in the sense of persecution or anything like that, like if you were on a desert island by yourself, but you had a Bible, there still would be a cost to be counted. And the reason is you're denying self. Yeah. And that's why Jesus proclaims, like, count the cost before you follow me. The cost is yourself, denying self, picking up your cross daily and following me. That's the price. Count that first before you become a Christian, because if you don't count that, you become a Christian, self's going to get in the way and you're going to want to keep him alive. And I'm trying to put him on the cross, and we're going to have two opposite agendas here, and that's never going to work. And we just don't hear that today. Like that message is just missing from modern day Christianity. And I'm convinced that's the reason the church is in the mess it is, Christian lives are in the mess they're in. Like we're living a Christianity that doesn't work, it doesn't function, because we're giving a message that's opposite of what God says.
I think also, like a lot of like the world is they'll take a Bible quote, you know what I mean? Like God will fight for you, just be still. Okay. Yes, God said that, but so many people take that as, oh, God's going to fight for me. I have never been to church and I've never opened the Bible, but yet God is still going to fight for me. And then when you explain to them, like, no, he only fights for you.
He's actually fighting against you. I'm sorry to break the news to you.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It becomes almost like,
how dare you?
How dare God not fight for me because I don't love him?
Well, and it goes back to thinking about yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's like, he literally died for you. He died for you. He doesn't, like, not to be, like, it's going to sound terrible no matter what, but, like, you don't deserve it. You don't. So, like, really, he shouldn't care about you. He shouldn't anything, but he does.
Yeah. I think you preached even a Sunday school lesson or a message about how reasonable expectation, you know what I mean? And I remember talking to one of the LifeWise classes, and it's like, if someone gives you $1, what is the reasonable expectation? You give them back $1. If they give you $10, you give them. Well, Jesus gave his life, so what is your reasonable expectation?
Entire philosophy, Romans 1-11 tells us of everything Jesus has done. Romans 12:1 says, therefore, present your life a living sacrifice. The reasonable thing to do after everything he's done is to give your life back to him.
Well said, everyone. Well said.
Like, if nothing else, she should just have a little, like, chess clock over there that she's like being productive, at least. I don't know. All right, today's considerable quote. I actually don't know if this guy's alive or dead. I got this quote from another person, which may be dangerous, but I trust the person who gave me the quote. So anyhow, this is what this person says, whether dead or alive. If we ask what is the very essence of the heart of Christianity and the Christian life, the answer is that God has summed up and centered all things in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ. This means that Christianity is not a number of things as in themselves. It is just himself, and himself as resident within those who have received him as who and what he is. T. Austin Sparks. Today's feature content is Ben Fuller, Nothing Without You. So item of the week. Sorry, CJ.
Oh.
So we have a dart and or picture of a dart, non-lethal soft-tipped or picture of a dart, a toilet paper roll, emptied, preferably. I mean, I guess you don't have to bring it empty. You could bring a very padded toilet paper roll.
Could be useful.
It could be. And then, CJ, what else should they bring? I said that. Me.
What did you say? Bad poems for Chuck.
Okay. They had to get in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. It is time. It's a very serious moment. We want you to bring the worst poetry you are able to write humanly possible.
I mean, they did a good job.
They did a
last year.
wonderful job last year. And we will have Chuck Baldwin. If you're listening, Chuck, this is your warning. We will have Bad Poetry Night with Chuck again one evening at camp. I think that had to be the highlight of my camp year last year. Like that was one of my favorite things
best.
ever we've done in 15 years. And it is coming back this year. So write your bad poetry and bring it with you for points for you and your team and entries for gifts, prizes. New things at camp. So last week we announced that we will have a barista on staff coffee shop.
Are we doing what we said we were going to
Yeah,
do?
that's fine.
Okay. We're going to, is it an option, either or?
Let's see what you say.
So we are doing a laser tag this year.
Yes. So we have a laser
So-
tag system.
Yeah.
It has been tested by children
Yeah.
and approved, and they loved it.
Yeah.
It works really well. So we're excited to offer that. We're going to have hopefully a laser tag arena with lights and fog and the whole thing. So yeah, look forward to that. It's new for the schedule this year.
I have a fog machine in the back of my car.
Do you really? Could I borrow that?
You can have it.
Okay, because I was going to buy one.
All right.
Yeah,
you
I'll
can
take
have
it. I'll take
mine.
it. Thank you. See,
Wow.
miracles happening right here on the podcast. Provision at its best from the trunk of Kevin.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was gonna throw it away, and something just stopped.
He's got to make room for his ironing board.
Yeah.
all right. Well,
Oh, come back next week to find out your
yes.
teams.
Yes. So next week on the Godcast, we will be going over our final preview for camp. And then we also will be announcing the teams for all of our campers at the NYC 2025. And so make sure to tune in to see what team you're on. We have never announced that in advance. And so
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Now, are we still doing it the old-fashioned way as well, or no?
No.
Only because
Well-
for the people who don't tune in, like they're gonna have.
Yeah,
We have plans.
We have plans.
Oh, okay.
We have plans.
All right. Okay.
They'll just figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. By Thursday, they should know what team they're on. Thursday of
Hopefully.
camp, that is. Anyways. So anything else? Is that
Probably.
team announcements? Our staff announcements. Are we doing that on here too? We didn't actually.
Oh,
talk
I
about
don't
that. Yeah, those will be coming out too.
Yeah.
Look at your inbox. I think that's probably the best place to find those. Those will be coming soon. But yeah, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, share, and
Any birthdays?
nope.
Nobody was born
no
this
one's
week.
been born this month.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Kevin's giving us a pretty nice montage.